This evening. Basically, these are the ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing the state of the deniers, the state, the last moments of those who deny the concept of Qiyamah and the concept of resurrection and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The reason why people deny, we looked at the ayat earlier and even yesterday, two reasons. Number one, people have this tendency and the desire to live a life of freedom. They don't like restrictions. And so especially so that they can do whatever they want as far as the evil desires are concerned. And as I had mentioned, sometimes even in our people, those who even believe in Allah, Rasul and the Imams and the Qiyamah, they also say, make it easy for us. This is a human tendency, and sometimes that becomes a barrier when it reaches to a very higher level. That's where then the Qiyamah is just, out of the focus. They don't want to think about it because they want to have a good life here, good life from their own perspective. The second reason was what we saw yesterday, with يُحِبُّونَ الْعَاجِلَ, the love of the present world. They are so much engrossed into it. And we talk about this concept that dunya and the blessing that Allah has given to us is not to be shunned. It is how we relate to this dunya. Do we become the slave of this dunya, or do we control this dunya? And that is the main thing, where you use it in order to build your own akhirah. And so then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about what will happen when the death comes to the ones who deny. كَلَّا إِذَا بَلَغَتِ التَّرَاقِيَ. They can say whatever they want, but they have to realize that when the soul reaches, now the word soul is not there in the ayat itself. It is implied. So the literal translation would be when it reaches up to the collarbones. But the implied word there is very clear. There is no dispute about it. It refers to the soul of the human being. And this is it's not a medical definition of death. Neither it is a Shari'i definition of maut. This is the urfi, the way we perceive people when we, not many of us, see a person at the last moment of their life. But, the feeling is such as if, the soul gradually moves from the extreme limbs of the person and comes up, and then as if, it reaches here and then it goes out. And so this is the common perception, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking at the common way that people sense or they experience death. And so when the soul reaches up to the collar bones, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to. At that stage of death, the person's eyes of the heart will open up. His eyes might be closed, he might be in coma. But at that moment, before the actual death happens, the new world opens us for the person. Whether he's a believer or non-believer, this is where they come to see the reality. And this is where the person would be able to even hear the malaika and others talking about. And so this وَقِيلَ مَنْ رَاقِ, and it will be said that who can take him up. Now what does this actually mean? Although I have already added the word angels here, that the person who is in the state of death will hear the angels talking, but actually there are two explanations given by the Mufassirin based on the term raqiya. One is that the family members, ruqya is also used for, the prescription paper which the doctor writes for the medicine, nusqa. And so one meaning would be that the family members will be talking. And who will take him up means who will help him and save him from this suffering and cure his disease so that he doesn't die. The other tafsir basically is that it refers to the angels who will be talking to one another. And Malakul Maut is basically the chief of that department of death. And he has many other under him. And so the issue will be who will take his soul up, the angel of mercy or the angel of adhab and torment. And so either of the two doesn't matter, but the person, once he reaches to that stage of death, whether they are believers or non-believers, the realities will open up. The new world will be known to them. And even if they do iman at that time, it will be useless. Because that is the moment, once you see the reality with your inner eyes, your chance of, now I say that, I believe in God, it's too late. Just like Fir'aun, when the adhab already came onto him, he says, Amantu. I believe in the Lord of Bani Israel and Musa and Harun. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the term Al-an. I'm putting the tone in there. Means now it's too late. Fir'aun, you should have done this maybe an hour before. I would have accepted it. But now that azab is right onto you, it is too late. And so this is the scene that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala paints at that time. And then the issue would be وَظَنَّ عَنَّهُ الْفِرَاقِ. Dhanna here is not in the mantiq's terminology. This is in the meaning of ilm. That now he will know for sure that person who is now dying, when the soul reaches to this point, he knows that this is the end. This is the al-firaq and the parting. Parting from, number one, wife and children, the family and the extended family and the tribe that he loved, relied on them for everything. And the business. Actually, I'm just getting this list from an ayat which is in Surah Tawbah. The business that, the owner would be always worried that one day it might go down. And وَمَسَاكِنَ تَرْضَوْنَهَا in Surah Tawbah. And the houses that you really love, you are pleased with it, the mansion that you have built, now you will be leaving everything behind. Your relatives, wife, children, and the people whom you loved, the wealth that you accumulated, the source of your wealth, and the house that you really liked. And this is the time of parting from all that. And this is where, he comes to know that this is the end now. There are hadiths where in a symbolic sense they say that when the person is on the verge of death, if he would ask his wealth, would you come with me to the grave? The wealth will say, well, I'll buy the grave for you, pay for your kafan and the funeral expenses and maybe for your majlis and arba'in, but after that, no. I will become the property of your children. Then he turns to the family. They will say, well, we will do our, your last rites. It is your haqq on us and we will make sure. We are not just going to keep you. After a few days, if there are no, facilities to preserve the body, even the family members will run away from the body. So they also would like to kind of, as soon as possible, just bury. And this is where we come to realize that the only thing which will go with us in the grave are our a'mal and our deeds and nothing else. And so this is وَظَنَّ عَنَّهُ الْفِرَاقِ. This is the parting. Everything will be gone. وَالْتَقِتْ سَاقْ بِالسَّاقِ. This is again description that once the soul comes out, because all the limbs basically will become motionless, will not have the ability to move, and referring to the extreme limbs, the shank, they also will kind of collapse close to one another, over one another. This is again putting a scenery of what will happen at the end. And this is where the person would realize, إِلَى رَبِّكَ يَوْمَئِذٍ الْمَسَاقِ, that this death is basically the beginning of the process where a person will be now driven towards his Lord to meet him on the day of Qiyamah for judgment and accountability of the beliefs and the deeds. Now, all this that we have seen in these ayat from Surah al-Qiyamah, they're all situation of the person who denies the Qiyamah. So it is about those who are non-believers. But we have to realize that, these ayat, although they are related to the non-believers, but they are also a warning and message for us, those who believe. Let me share with you one very interesting hadith from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. Where he talks about remembering death. Why should we remember death? Remember yesterday we talked about this issue of love of this dunya. To love this dunya is not bad, but not to the extent that we become blind. And the akhirah is then, out of our focus. That should be there all the time. And if it is there, then we will use this dunya itself in order to build our akhirah. And therefore you will see there is quite a lot in the sayings of our Masumeen who say that, remember death, remember death. This emphasis on visiting the graveyards. It's not only for the ajr and sawab and reward of the marhumeen. Actually, it's a reminder for ourselves. This issue of participating in the janazah of the mu'mineen. It is one of the last rites that they have upon us. But it's also a moment of reflection. Especially when you look at the grave which had been dug up before this person is put in, you have to realize this is what the whole world is fighting for. This is where I'm going to go at the end. Nothing will go with me to that grave. And so zikr al-maut itself can be a very powerful tool in order to reform ourselves. There is no need to despair. I don't want people to go through distress. And then that becomes another problem. But, to remember death itself has its own, impact. And Imam talks about it. He mentions about 5 or 7 items. He says, zikr al-maut. What does remembrance of death do to you? Number 1, yumitu shahawat fi nafs. It kills the evil desires which is in you. Number 1, because when you realize that, the evil desires then will say, okay, that is my eventual, destination. I have to prepare for it. Number 2, وَيَقْطَعُ مَنَابِطَ الْغَفْلَةِ. All the causes and the roots of ghaflat, heedlessness. Ghaflat means not having this akhirah in your radar. Forgetting it. And that is the beginning of the problem. When we talk about the issue of spiritual, reform, and we talk about Islah of the nafs, one of the first steps is to get out of this state of ghaflat. Once you become, aware, and consciousness comes in that, why I'm here, what is the purpose? So ghaflat is basically one of the reasons for that. And so zikr al-maut basically uproots the manabit, the causes and the roots of heedlessness. Number 3, وَيُقَوِّ الْقَلْبِ بِمَوَاعِدِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. Our heart becomes stronger by having, more belief in the promise that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made. By remembering that Allah has promised us that if we do such certain things, He is going to fulfill our what He has promised us. Number 4, وَيُرِقَ الطَّبْعِ. It will soften the nature of human being, which is, inclined towards evil, desire for things which is not, not permissible in Islam. وَيَكْثِرُ عَلَامَ الْهَوَى. And it destroys signs of desires. Say, destroying desires is one thing. Destroying the signs of desire is something else. In Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about a concept where He says, there are many things which say, don't do this. Don't kill a human being. Do not steal from people. Very straightforward. There are certain things He says, لا تقربوا. Don't even go close to it. What does it mean? There are certain things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that before you reach to that evil, there are certain muqaddimat which will pull you towards it. Situations which you allow yourself to be into it, and then you will be gradually, pulled towards that evil act. And so you stay away from it. And this is where we have to realize that, even these signs, where we realize, okay, this itself might not be a problem, but it could lead me, entice me towards haram. Sometimes I hear that, Maulana, we live in a multicultural society, we have friends from other faiths. And I'm not talking about interfaith activities, no, this is different from that. This is intersocial activities, And then they say, we want to have, let's go for a party somewhere. Or let's go to the club. And the question is put that, I'm sure I'm not going to drink there. And I'll not focus on the haram things. I'll just be with my friends. You might not drink, but you're going to a place which itself is a problem. It can gradually, pull you. This is where peer pressure comes in. And so we have to not only refrain from what is known as evil desires, but even the signs which can gradually lead us to that and stay away from it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the term لا تقربوا. When we talk about the issue of modesty and hijab, the first step, He says لا تقربوا الزنا. One of the ayats about under لا تقربوا, He says, do not go even near adultery. What does it mean? Not go even near it. It means do not allow those situations which can gradually lead you to that. And one of the first steps is actually controlling the eyes. Fasting is not only, refraining from food and drink. It covers different parts of the body, including the fast for the eyes. And this is where we have to read. This is the first, front of resisting that issue of la taqrabu zina. If we can control our eyes. It's interesting, in one of the ahadith Qudsiyya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to through the Prophet, He says to us, that if your eyes disobeys you, it is going towards places where you're not supposed to look, to these, signs or the symbols or the pictures of the movie or things like that, which are haram. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I have given you the tool. Just close your eyes. He says, what is this eyelid for? So you don't need to go to the doctor to get cure for it. No need to even go and ask Maulana for advice on that, or to see a counselor for it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if your eyes is disobeying you, just shut it. Close your eyes. I've given you the eyelids. And so this is where we have to realize that, sometimes you don't just say, okay, I'm sure of myself. Well, you might be sure of yourself, but you're not sure of shaitan. Shaitan looks for the opportunity especially if you put yourself in a situation, and that's where we have to be careful about the signs of desires. Number 6, ذكر الموت ويطفئ نار الحرص. Remembrance of death will actually put off this fire of greed. It is human nature. Everybody has that. It is the matter of controlling it. And if you remember maut, this is where a very powerful way of dealing with our desires. And number 7, the last one, وَيُحَقِّرُ الدُّنْيَا. If you remember death, then this dunya loses its value. Not that it becomes, something bad you should shun. No. Then you do not consider this to be the objective and the destination. You look at it as the means of building your akhirah. And that's where, so there are 7 points that Imam talks about. And then he says, this is the meaning of what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam he says, this is what he meant when he said, فِكْرُ سَاعَةٍ خَيْرٌ مِّنْ عِبَادَةِ سَنَةٍ. 1 hour of reflection is better than 1 year's prayers. Reflection on this reality of death. So if we remember, death, of course, it doesn't mean فِكْرُ سَاعَةٍ is only limited to this. This is one example of it, that it's more valuable in the eyes of the Prophet than a year's, namaz and prayers. Let me now, since I said that these were the ayat relevant to those who do not believe, we have many ahadiths. I just want to make sure, I don't leave you depressed. And so I need to end with this hadith from Al-Kafi. Sheikh Kulaini has a narration from Sadir al-Sayrafi, a very close companion of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. Where the discussion is about the impact of the law of Ahlul Bayt in our life. What are the points and areas where it will really help us? And one is in the situation of death. A mu'min's death will be not like a munkir or a kafir. And this is where, Sadir actually asked the Imam, جُعِلْتُ فِدَاكَ يَبْنَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ هَلْ يَكْرَهُ الْمُؤْمِنَ عَلَى قَبْضِ رُوحِهِ. Does the mu'min, dislike when his soul is taken out? Does he dislike death? Normally, this is what should be any human being situation. Imam says, La wallahi. No. When it comes to the death of a mu'min, the last moments there, فَإِنَّهُ إِذَا أَتَاهُ مَلِكُ الْمَوْتِ لِقَبْضِ رُوحِهِ. Yes, initially when the angel of death will come to take out the ruh of a mu'min, جَزَعَ عِنْدَ ذَلِكَ. He will be distressed at that time. Very normal. فَيَقُولُ لَهُ مَلِكُ الْمَوْتِ. But then the angel of death will say to that mu'min, Ya wali Allah. A mu'min is wali of Allah, he is a friend of Allah. لا تجزع. Do not be displayed or distressed. فَوَالَّذِي بَعَثَ مُحَمَّدًا صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ وَسَلَّمَ. He says, I swear by the one who raised the Prophet, Muhammad as a prophet, لَأَنَا أَبَرُّ بِكَ وَأَشْفَقُ عَلَيْكَ مِنْ وَالِدٍ رَحِيمٍ لَوْ حَضَرَكَ. Malik al-Maut says to the mu'min, he says, I swear by Muhammad, by Allah who sent Muhammad, that I am more kind and benevolent to you than the merciful father if he was present here. افتح عينك فانظر. Open your eyes and see. Now we are not talking about these eyes. We are talking what is known as the eyes of barzakh, the spiritual eyes. the inner eyes. At that moment when a person reaches to that point, whether he's a kafir or a mu'min, this is what happens to them, and they are able to see the reality. For the kafir, it will be disgrace. And so, when he opens the eyes, قَالَ وَيُمَثَّلْ لَهُ, this is where we hear the whole statement. This is not ghulu. When he opens his inner eyes, before he dies, he will actually see Rasulullah, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Fatima, Hassan, and Hussein, alayhimu salatu wassalam. And he will be told that this is Rasulullah, this is Amir al-Mu'mineen, this is Fatima, this is Hassan, this is Hussein. وَرَفَقَاؤُكَ, they are your friends. And so when he opens his eyes, that is the time. There is another narration also where that statement is not here, but very similar to that, where the Malakul Maut then will say, do you want to go back to your family? After seeing the blessed face of Rasulullah, no, the mu'min will say, no, I want to go here. So for him now going to that, stage is basically, it reveals him of all the sorrow and sadness. Now he prefers to be in the company of the Ma'sumin compared to his own Mal and Banoon, his family and his wealth and the dunya that he has left. And at that time, somebody will make a call from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to him. And we initially, when we talked about nafs, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where He says, لا أقسم بيوم القيامة ولا أقسم بنفس اللوامة, we talked about النفس المطمئنة. The way a mu'min will be addressed is very interesting. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة, or the one who has this tranquil, soul. مطمئنة in what? This peace and tranquility is coming from where? Because that soul is attached to ila Muhammadin wa Ahl Bayti. Itmi'nan of nafs comes when you link yourself to Muhammad and Al Muhammad. Irji' ila rabbika radiyatan. Return to your Lord while you are pleased. Pleased with what? Irji' ila rabbika radiyatan bil wilaya. With the wilayat of Ali and Ali. Maradiyatan bil thawab. And this is where, you will be pleased with the thawab that which comes with that. فَادْخُلِي فِي عِبَادِي. You will be admitted into my special servants, يعني Muhammad wa Ahl Baytihi, in their company. وَادْخُلِي جَنَّتِي. And then we come to the issue of Jannat. And at that time, فَمَا شَيْءٌ أَحَبُّ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ إِسْتِعْلَالِ رُوحِهِ وَاللُّهُوقِ بِالْمُنَادِي. That at that moment, that mu'min will not wish anything but to move forward and go to the level of barzakh. Salawat. I have already 2-3 questions. Inshallah, we'll answer them tomorrow. I didn't get time to work on them today. But let me now end with 2 lines of poetry of this famous poet from Pakistan, Sibt Jafar, who was actually targeted and killed because of the way he used his words in support of the Ahlul Bayt. And it's interesting that just a short time before he was killed, the poetry that he has left behind talks about this as if he had this sense that, he is coming close to his life in this dunya, where he says, غُسْلَ مَيَّتْ نَكَهْنَا مِرَ غُسْلْ ko. Don't say that my ghusl is ghusl mayyit. This is not the ablution for death. Ujle malbus ko mat kafan naam do. The white shroud that you have, dressed me with, don't say this is a shroud or kafan. This is my dress. Where he ends by saying that मैं चला हूँ अली से मुलाकात को, आई एम एक्चुअली गोइंग टू सी माई मौला अली, जिसकी थी आरज़ू वो घड़ी आ गई, द डिज़ायर दैट आई हैड, द टाइम हैज़ कम टू सी द इमाम। सलावत पढ़ने एक बार। रब्बना आतिना फिद दुनिया हसनतन व फिल आखिरति हसना व क़िना अज़ाबन नार बिरहमतिका या अरहमर राहिमीन।